I think it's showtime, as they say. So I do want to thank you all, and I think that everyone who is online today probably has some unfortunate experience somehow, some way with whether it's identity theft or fraud. I am Margie Cosmerl, along with my associate Liz David, who I'm sure you recognize. And our very, very special guest today is Eugenia Wright. Gina is Senior Advisor at AARP. And for those of you who received the bulletin, we know that AARP is making this very important to continue to keep us up to date. So Gina has led the communications effort to educate consumers on how to spot and avoid scams. She has over 20 years experience in strategic communications and marketing, covering a range of consumer issues from caregiving to work, jobs, and saving for retirement, which is right up our Blue Heron runway. So without further ado, I'm going to turn this over to Gina. And Gina, thank you so much again for agreeing to speak to our Northrop Grumman friends, our clients, and to enlighten all of us. We're all very interested in what you have to share with us today.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's really my pleasure to have the opportunity to speak to you all today on a topic that can have a significant impact on our savings, and that is fraud. So I wanted to start off with giving you a landscape, painting a picture of what the fraud landscape looks like. And I'm pausing just a second. I'm having trouble with my cursor that I'm hoping will fix itself here in a second. There we go. Sorry about that delay. So I want to start off painting a picture of what does the fraud landscape look like today. So according to the Federal Trade Commission, consumers lost $3.3 billion with a B dollars last year to fraud. And this is up significantly from the year before. And a lot of that has to do with COVID, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But so who are they targeting? The reality is that they are targeting anyone and everyone. I think there's a misconception that older people are the main targets of scammers, but the reality is that younger people tend to fall victim more often. However, older people tend to have more assets and money to lose, and so that's where the higher losses happen. But there is some good news in all of this, which is that we can do something about it. Power in this case, knowledge in this case really is power. And research has shown that if you know about a specific scam, you are less likely to engage with it and ultimately fall victim to it. And that's why we're here today. We want to share some tips with you to help protect yourselves and your families. So why are scams so effective? There's a lot of good reasons, and one of them is the fact that they're just good at what they do. We have this image in our heads, I think, that scammers are these lone wolf people who maybe someone's in their mother's basement and doing this on their own. But the reality is that these people mainly are professionals. They do this every day. They specialize in specific scams. Sometimes it's by country or by area. And there's really an entire international industry based around fraud. So these people are really formidable foes. They are highly trained and they're really, really good at what they do. And another part of what their approach includes, it's what we call getting people under the ether. And basically what that means is that they try to get you into this heightened state of emotion. They want to either maybe promise you like, oh my gosh, you've won this lottery or the sweepstakes, or they frighten you there's, you're being threatened with arrest, or your grandchild's in prison or whatever. And they really want to get you worked up. They want to disrupt that logical thinking process, so that you are more likely to fall victim to their ruse. So that is one of the ways they are very, very effective. And one of the other things that has changed over the years is a thing called robocalling. So in the olden days, of course, you had to like dial the number to reach people. And now that with robocalling, they're able to make these computer generated calls, tons of them every hour, and trying to reach potential victims. So they're able to just to reach a lot more people, which means they're able to, victimize that many more people. And of course, some robocalls are good. We tend to think of robocalls as being a negative thing, but the reality is that there's a lot of good use for robocalls. For instance, we might get a call from our doctor's office or from the pharmacy saying that a prescription's ready for pickup. So there's definitely a good use for robocalls. Unfortunately, criminals have also glommed onto this idea of robocalls and are using it for illegal means as well. And as you can see on this chart, that how many robocalls are made into this country every year, it's staggering. And there is a slight dip in 2020, which is due to a couple of reasons, including some federal legislation that was enacted and some more adoption of some tools, blocking tools. And again, the COVID had an effect on everyone. But phone still is one of those primary ways how scammers contact people even today. And next I wanted to get into talking about some of the top scams that are reported to the FTC and that we are seeing on our own fraud helpline as well. And they include imposter scams, romance scams, sweepstakes scams, and COVID related scams.
Yeah, and Gina, I think we've had reports from clients on those top three definitely. And the imposter scams, I can think of a couple clients who have turned over their computers unknowingly. The imposter is saying that they're trying to fix something. The romance scams, unfortunately, again, the preying on, I just wonder if they're not looking like at obituaries or something where, widows or widowers.
They absolutely do.
It just, and thankfully, Liz and I are trained in some of these instances. It's part of our continuing education. You think it's not going to happen, but again, we've had these reports. The sweepstakes scams, a dear client in her 80s in New York, and she shared how she was scammed picking up the phone. She's not on the computer, so it's not a computer scam. And back to the ether you're talking about, she got really psyched into thinking if she put cash into a FedEx envelope that she would win big time. Yeah. So it just, gosh, I'm glad that in these different cases, they've talked to Liz, they've talked to me, and we've been able to be a sounding board and say, yeah, that's not really what's happening.
Yeah, you bring up a really good point. And first is that this has nothing to do with being smart. It's not that, smart people don't fall victim. The reality is we are all potential victims, and it has nothing to do with intelligence. There are people with PhDs who fall victim. It doesn't matter. They are, like I said, these people are real professionals. They figure out the best way into you, and we all have our own susceptibility or vulnerability. For instance, if you have grandchildren you're really close to, well, that might be the grandparent scam, might be the thing that would really get to you. And again, everyone has their possible, soft spot or vulnerability. And again, it has nothing to do with you. And part of the challenge we've seen, and that's really also represents the figures that are reported to the FTC, which are only a fraction of that crime that's actually happening, is that people do blame themselves, unfortunately, and many people do not report. And so the fact that they can talk to you, the fact that when they call our helpline, our fraud helpline, or report it to the FTC or share it with law enforcement, families, that is a terrific thing. And they really are helping other people, warn other people. So even if they aren't able to get their money back, which is the case in many instances, they are doing good by raising awareness and helping other people. So we definitely encourage that. So imposter scams, you mentioned a couple of them, but these come in many different ways. Tech support is one of the most common ones. You'll often see a pop-up on your box on your window on your computer saying you have a virus, you need to call this number immediately, or else all your information is going to get lost. And then the whole thing is a scam. You'll call the number, they'll take your credit card for some, antivirus software, whatever. But again, the whole thing is a scam. The IRS, I think a lot of people have heard about this one now, but they're still using it, saying that you owe back taxes or something like that. Social Security, your account has been compromised, or someone is using your account illegally and they need to clear things up. Or else you'll be arrested because it's your Social Security number and you're associated with that, of course. And I mentioned the grandparent scam, where you might get a call saying that your grandchild has been arrested, or maybe they've been in an accident. In any of these cases, though, they follow the same kind of path, which is to tell you something's wrong. Really get you scared, and again, trying to disrupt that logical thinking process. And then there's something you have to do immediately, that they're not going to give you time to think about it and kind of calm down and think more logically about it. It's like, we have to solve this instantly. And that's when you're, whether you're getting out your credit card information, or they're asking for a wire transfer or a gift card payment. That's when the ask for money comes. And of course, in the end, it's either way, it's a scam. So some of the things you can do to protect yourself include first of all, knowing that Social Security Administration, IRS are not going to be calling you. If you get a call from supposedly a grandchild in trouble, you can get their information, but then call your grandchild, because this has happened a lot of times where the person, the grandchild, of course, is totally safe and fine. If you had the chance to hang up the phone and then check on them, you would find that out. And again, the tech support, that they're not going to be pop-ups on your computer, having you call some random number as well. So I think if you can figure out, or in the back of your mind, have that knowledge that if I can kind of disrupt this crisis moment for just a minute, I can probably think this through and, reach out to someone else. If you're calling back, the IRS or Social Security, of course, don't call back the number they give you, because the whole thing is a scam. But if you go online and you can look, at the .gov websites and get the correct number for the Social Security or IRS, of course, you can verify with them. And in that case, you would know that that was a scam.
Yeah, and just as you're saying, Gina, I know with the couple clients, unfortunately, who had the incidents with the technology, they got into such a panic situation.
Yeah.
And the one called a friend and said, I don't know, somebody's like now in my computer. So called from the house phone instead of the cell phone or what have you. And the friend said, okay, unplug the computer immediately, whatever, just to disrupt what was possibly taking place.
Yeah, and the tech support scam, you brought up a good point, which is that it's not only, this happened to my mother, where she thought she was, there was some virus on her computer and she had to solve it immediately. So she purchased the thought she was purchasing the software over the phone. But they will also sometimes also have some kind of spyware put on your, or malware on your computer, where they can then see what you're doing. And if you're logging on, to your bank account or that type of thing, they would end up getting that information. So it is important to really disconnect, and especially, and I know that we all panic because there's so much of our lives on our computers, and if we think that there's something wrong with it, that is really unnerving and alarming. So yeah, if you can just try to again activate that logical side of your brain, and know that there are, even if there was a problem with your computer, it's nothing that would have to be solved in 30 seconds, as the person on the phone is probably telling you. And so that there are options for you to figure out, take a minute and figure out what's really going on, and get that resolved. Online romance scam is another really popular scam. Some of these are kind of the more traditional romance scams, where someone's actively looking for love. They're on a dating website, and they're, again, looking for friendship or love. And unfortunately, there's lots of scammers who are posing as a love interest on these sites. They'll usually use a fake picture that is, of course, not them at all. And they've just had this whole made up biography about who they are. They'll usually try to get you off the platform very quickly, because they don't want to have to go through this third party. They want to contact you directly. They usually, again, profess love really quickly. And there's always a reason why they can't meet up. They're usually not in your locality, but maybe they're across the country, maybe they're even international. But they will not be able to meet up with you until one time they, say like, yes, I'm planning on this trip. Let's get together. And at the last minute, there's a problem. There's something came up, or there's a business dealing fell through. I need to resolve this before I can see you. And they need, they have tons of money. They may show you their financials, that show how much money they have, but there's just this little kind of glitch where they just need some money immediately. And they ask you to send them that money. And again, it could be through a variety of means, but the end effect is that they're asking for money. Usually this starts out smaller, and then they see if you're willing to send them money. And then they start increasing the amount that they ask for you for. And again, there's always a reason. Why they can't meet up with you. There's always what seems like a logical excuse for a long time, but all these things should be red flags.
Yeah, I think that the love is blind kind of comes up, and I have seen that with, unfortunately, a couple where they're so involved at that point, so engaged, back to that ether that you mentioned, in a different way. And
absolutely,
to you and I from the outside, it's like, well, clearly this is fraudulent. And it's kind of one of those, well, I hate to break it to you, but we have a responsibility that we have to.
Yeah, and again, these people are professionals. They are, figuring out over, years really of doing this stuff every day. And a lot of these scammers will be working several people at a time. And so they know what works, and they figure out very quickly, like, oh, this person's, whatever, here's her situation or his situation, and they figure out the way into your heart very quickly. They shower you with, attention and saying all the right things and being attentive. And so people are just so, invested in these individuals, and really have fallen in love, have many times planned out their new lives together. It can be very hard to recognize that this, in fact, is a scam. And this is one of the most, I'd say, devastating forms of, fraud, is that people not only lose money, but they have their hearts broken too. And it's just so emotionally devastating for people.
Well, and I think, like you said
it's
before,
terrible.
Gina, it's so important that everyone understands. I mean, we're all vulnerable, and it's not, because I know that there's an embarrassment side to it when it's exposed in these romance scams, but you know, again, everyone, regardless, like you said, a PhD or not, can fall prey.
Yeah. And a lot of times people are also may not be looking for love really at all, but they're maybe they're just on Facebook and they get a friend request, and we all get these friend requests where you're like, I'm not sure quite who that is, but sure. And this friend is, you know, claims like, oh yeah, we met many years ago back at, you're like, okay, I guess, like, I don't remember. And, you know, it can just be kind of a friendship, and, or at least start off as a friendship. Some of these aren't even romantic, you know, relationships, but just, you know, some people are just like, oh, look, here's this great person who wants to be friends with me. And again, a lot of times they can get a lot of your information off of social media. So that's one thing to consider as we're, you know, posting things online and publicly of what is available out there. And they certainly use that. They'll go onto your, you know, Facebook page or social media sites and look at your information and look at you. If you have children or grandchildren or friends, they'll look at their stuff and they'll know that, like, oh, okay, they took this vacation last year, wherever. And I can, you know, maybe that's an in for a conversation piece or something that I claim I know about them when I actually don't really know them at all. So they definitely do a lot of social engineering, trying to figure out who you are and what will really appeal to you. And again, it's tough because they're really good at what they do, and that who doesn't want a good friend, or, you know, if you're in the right situation, you know, you're looking for love. So it really is tough. And certainly one thing you can do in this is to, again, be wary of anyone trying to get you off the platform too quickly. If they're, you know, just seem very intense, it went from like, I was just kind of met you for the first time or online met you, to, you know, all this showering of attention and maybe professing love, that type of thing, that can be a red flag. And another thing is like the pictures people use that, you know, a lot of times they obviously are just using pictures they find on the internet, someone else's social media site. So, and one thing you can do is do a reverse lookup in Google of that picture to see if anyone else's name is associated with it. And if it's anyone else other than the person you think you're talking to or communicating with, you know, that's probably a good indication that it's a scam. Another popular or common scam is the sweepstakes scams. This might be in the form of an actual sweepstakes or a lottery. You know, you've won a bunch of money. There's some free money from the government grant or something like that. I get frequently the Home Depot, you're a loyal customer, $50 gift card is yours. And all you have to do is pay for something. You pay for the taxes and the fees up front, for instance. And again, you end up giving some money, thinking you're getting this much bigger award back. But the reality is that it is a scam. So be really careful. For some of us too, like if you've been told you've been, you know, won something where you know you didn't even enter anything, that's probably a red flag as well. But in any case, if it's Publishers Clearinghouse, you know, that you can go to their website, you can look up their number, you can contact people. Don't, you know, send money to anyone, and they wouldn't be asking you for money anyway. And then finally, you know, COVID scams have really exploded. We have this saying that scammers chase the headlines, and that's very true in this case, this past year. They are looking for opportunity to have you parted with your money. And COVID provided a great opportunity for scammers, unfortunately. And we saw a whole host of different scams that cropped up in this past year, from treatments, cures, testing, early access to vaccines, stimulus check scams and fraud, work from home scams. Obviously, lots of people were working at home. Some people had jobs that wouldn't transfer to working virtually, and they were looking for work from home positions, and so they were targeted with those work from home scams. And now what we're seeing a lot of as the pandemic has evolved is that people are starting to return to a little more normal life again, and the travel scams are huge now. I think so many of us are ready to get out there and go someplace now that we've been home for over a year. And so that, again, scammers smell opportunity, and that's where the opportunity is. And there's Airbnb style scams where people might actually take legitimate and use legitimate pictures of an Airbnb, and you think you're booking that exact house or apartment or whatever. Again, it's a scam. Rental car scams are huge right now. During the pandemic, a lot of the rental car agencies really pared down their fleet of rental cars because obviously people there wasn't much demand. And they have not built those back up. And so now that people are interested in traveling again, there's just a shortage of rental car availability. So again, there are ads for rental cars, when you think like, oh my gosh, I couldn't find them anywhere else, but here was this ad, or here was this great deal. It's so much less expensive than what I found elsewhere. They'll even have like the fake, 800 number set up for you to call. And again, you think you're really booking this car for your trip, and in fact, it's a scam. And people have actually gotten to the airport, gotten to this, to the checkout desk for their car rental, and literally found that like they do not have a car. So just be really careful. Make sure that you're, if you have a trusted website that you use for your travel, stick to that. You can look up the car rental agency phone numbers directly online. Make sure you're really going to the correct website. What they'll sometimes do is create a fake website and pay for an ad. So that might appear at the top of the page. That's where usually the ads are the first or second placement on the page when you do a search. So really make sure that you are typing in the correct URL, and you're going to the legitimate websites when you're looking up the information, whether again it's for a rental car or any other kind of airline ticket or Airbnb, etc.
Wow, that is unbelievable. Thank you. I would never have thought about any of those that you just mentioned.
Yeah, and like I said, we're and talking about being under the ether, in a way, we've all been under the ether this past year with everything going on. And I think now we're maybe a little bit more in that kind of euphoric end of things, where we're kind of excited, like, I want to get out there, I want to do things. And again, we're a little vulnerable to some of these scams, like you said, the travel scams that are happening right now. So no matter how scammers might be approaching you, there's one kind of red flag that you should be aware of that a lot of these scams involve, and that is the use of gift cards as a form of payment. I love gift cards as much as the next person. I like receiving them. I like giving them as gifts. However, scammers love them too. They like them because they're virtually untraceable. They're readily converted to cash, and they can move money around very easily with these gift cards. So that's why they like gift cards. However, and this is how the scam works, because I think a lot of people, when you hear like, oh, how are gift cards used as payment? Well, what the scammer will do is, again, say whether it's a tech support scam or something with your utility bill or romance, whatever it may be, they might instruct you to pay by gift card. They may not refer to it as a gift card. They might refer to it as a prepaid American Express card. They might say a Google Play card. And I know a lot of people aren't familiar with Google Play and they think, oh, okay. They might refer to it as an electronic voucher. No matter what terminology they use, however, they will still instruct you to go to, whether it's CVS or the Walgreens or whatever pharmacy is near you, a Target, maybe a Walmart. Go there and go to the rack of cards and you'll see whatever card they've instructed you to buy. If you're standing at any of these stores in front of a rack of cards, getting payment for anything, you know it's a scam 100% of the time. Again, if you're giving friends, family members a gift of a gift card for a present, that's a lovely thing. But anytime anyone requests payment by gift card, it is a scam, period. So if you, even if you're in the middle of a conversation or you get this email, if in the back of your mind, if you can think about that if anyone asks you to pay by gift card, it's a scam, and you know to discontinue any contact. So we've talked about some of the tips for avoiding those specific scams I just went over, but here are just some general tips that I think are really helpful. Of course, letting calls go to voicemail if you can, that's really helpful. I tend not to pick up the phone unless it pops up that it's, I have my contacts pre-programmed, and unless someone pops up, I usually let it go to voicemail, knowing that I can call them back, and you can, call back right away as well. You're not, even if it's an important call. So that's a good tip. You be really careful with your emails. Like I said, the scammers have gotten so sophisticated. I don't know if you remember those scams from a number of years ago. Excuse me, like the Nigerian prince scams, where you get these emails where it was like, excuse me, I had a little frog in my throat, where, kind of poorly worded English and kind of, fantastic sounding type of emails. Well, a lot of that has changed over the years, and the stuff that they're sending out now is usually much more sophisticated. Again, proper English. A lot of times they'll actually use the logos from the companies, so it looks legitimate. That the header will say, from Amazon or something. So it's really does look very close to being authentic. And I've had to catch myself numerous times, especially with email. And now I've even started getting some texts that are, scams as well, where again, I order lots of things off Amazon, for instance. If I get an email saying there's a problem with your account, we're trying to make this delivery, I think, oh, of course, because I usually have delivery coming every week anyway. It sounds real. I have a number of Apple products. I get the emails about like there's something wrong with your Apple account. Again, that sounds legitimate to me. And I've been careful not to click on anything within the email, but just have really spent a couple minutes sometimes studying it. You can scroll over the sender name. It might say, for instance, Amazon as the sender name, but if you look at the actual email address that is used, it will not be legitimate. And just know that groups like companies like Amazon and Apple aren't going to contact you anyway.
Yeah, those are good ones, Gina, because I know that I've had some of those cross my path before, and I usually ask one of my kids, like, "Do you think this is legit?" And they're like, "Don't open it, Mom." And like you're saying, it'll have like an Apple lookalike logo or Amazon or something. So they're tricky.
Yeah, I've had to study it. I've gotten texts about, again, hi, this is Joe, your delivery, guy. I'm here, I'm trying to deliver this package, and, I have a problem with, your address isn't, correct on the label or whatever. And again, totally worded correctly, sounds friendly, and like, oh, my delivery guy Joe sounds like a nice guy. And then, but again, like I didn't click on it, but it really has taken me sometimes a couple of minutes to look at it and look at it again and think about it. Because I'm like, it seems like this could be real. And of course, you don't want to miss a package if you're expecting one. But yeah, so you really do have to be on your guard and on your toes when it comes to that. And then again, checking your financial information, make sure you're monitoring your accounts, that there's nothing, no purchases or things money coming out of your account that you didn't authorize. And it's a good idea to set up electronic access so that you can check on that frequently. And then we're all struggling with the whole password issue of every place requires a password. Of course, you're supposed to have a unique password for everything. And that's what we encourage you to do. But then like, how do you keep all this stuff straight? Well, a password manager is one way you can do that. So it is important not to use the same password for all of your different accounts, because again, if one was hacked or they could figure out one, they would have access to a lot more of your information.
So password manager is like a password keeper app, right? Is that
exactly? And there's a variety. I'm not here to endorse any products, of course.
Right.
There's a variety of options out there, and you can search for it online. And I know and they do reviews of these things, and you can definitely find a number of really good ones. And that they can suggest passwords, but certainly they will be stored all in one place, and you don't have to keep up with this yourself. So that's really helpful.
Back to the emails too. I know even within our own organization, I might get an email that says, it's like, it'll pop up in my email. It'll say Margie Cosmerl, and it will say like, urgent, I need your attention to this. And there's a link. But if I look closely, number one, I know that that's not usually Margie's tone, but it will grab you quickly because it has her name on there. But then when you actually look at the email, it'll be some random bogus Gmail account. So that's where I think looking at that, the actual email address, not the name that pops up in your email, is really important.
Yeah, and you bring up a really good point, which is that it's not just companies that they are, pretending to be. A lot of times it's individuals. They will get the name. They might get access to your contact list and know, who your parent is, who your child is, who your sibling, your boss, your friends. So you might, get this email that you think is, again, from whether it's a colleague or a neighbor, a friend, a relative. And so they can definitely pose as someone who's very familiar with you and not just the company. And again, sometimes they'll have some information from social media or elsewhere where they know something about you. Like they know that, for instance, that your friend right now is on vacation in Florida and needs some money, had her purse stolen and needs some money. Well, your friend is in Florida. So then you think, oh my gosh, well, I want to help her out. I'll send some money. So they can be really clever in how they approach you and pretending to be someone that you know. And of course, if you think it's someone you trust them automatically and think, yes, I want to help out this person. So that is good advice to, as you said, to carefully check the sender of the email, not just the name that pops up, but the actual email address. And know that you can always contact that person directly and wait to hear back from them before you do send any money or share any personal information. Is contact the person first. And all this gets down to also engaging your inner skeptic. I think a lot of us do in the back of our mind have that that little nagging thought of like, is this a loss? And so if you ever feel that way, definitely stop, take a minute to think about it, and know that if you have that nagging feeling, there's probably a good reason for it, and to think about what you're doing. So we've been talking about scams and popular scams, but there's also another aspect of fraud we want to talk about today, and that is identity theft and fraud. So what is the difference between the two? So identity theft is when your information has been compromised. And I think, unfortunately, it's safe to say that you've all probably been in that situation. There have been so many data, breaches and hacks, and probably for most of us, our information is out there somewhere. However, it doesn't mean that it's actually been used yet. Fraud is when when your information has actually been used, whether it's setting up stealing your identity to set up someone's, a credit card or that type of thing. So fraud is when it's used. And a lot of times theft doesn't necessarily lead to fraud, or at least lead to fraud right away. So where does it go after your information has been compromised? Well, it goes in a place called the dark web, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about what that means. So the internet is kind of like this ocean, and what we see with public websites like Amazon or your news sites or social media sites, all that is in the public sphere. It's on the surface. That actually represents a small fraction of what is available on the internet. There's a thing called the deep web, which is kind of below the surface. This is an area where you need a password in order to access the information. And that is where, financial or health, legal information might be shared among people. And again, it's not searchable to the public, but it's there for people who need to share that information privately. Then beneath that, in the deep web, I should say, is about 90% of the internet. So that's a lot of space in that area compared to what we see on the surface. And then underneath that is a thing called dark web. And this is really hidden from the public completely. You need special software in order to access it. However, this software is free and available to anyone. This is a place where people communicate and transact if they are trying to remain anonymous. So people who might use this dark web might be, for instance, journalists. It might be political dissidents, spies even, and unfortunately also criminals. So the dark web has been a really accessible way for criminals to do business, again, because it is completely hidden from the public, because it's totally anonymous. This is where there is a large market for buying and selling stolen goods. And unfortunately, part of those stolen goods include digital goods, which are basically your identifiable information. So it includes, your name, date of birth, social security number, password information, etc. All of that is up for sale on a place called the dark web. And a lot of it can be purchased rather inexpensively too, which is scary. So this is where the information goes. It's not necessarily going to be used. Just because your information has been compromised doesn't mean that it will be ever turn into fraud. But I just wanted to explain kind of where that goes and how it could be used and how easily accessible it could be.
Well, and just how much of it there is, the visual of that tip of the iceberg versus what's below. That's scary.
It is. But there's some things that you can do, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. And one of them has to do with public Wi-Fi. So accessing the internet on a public network. So We all love going to coffee shops, and whether we're traveling in airports or we're out in the public space somewhere, and when we have access to public Wi-Fi, we think, oh, terrific, I can just like link up there and do what I want to online. But we wanted to make you aware that the public Wi-Fi is a real treasure trove for scammers. And then you need to be careful with what you do. If you're doing things like, surfing the web, you're checking the news, the weather, the game score, that type of thing, go for it. That's perfectly fine. If you're doing anything that's more personal, if you're, again, checking your online accounts, if you're doing any kind of shopping, if you're even doing like email and social media, I recommend that you don't do that on a public Wi-Fi network. So what can you do to keep yourself safe? One, you can do a couple of things. One is that you can, on your phone, a lot of times, I think the default is to connect automatically to the nearest Wi-Fi network. You can change that default on your phone so it doesn't do that automatically, so that if you are connecting, it's more intentional. Another thing you can do is to make sure that if you are connecting to a network, what some scammers will do is create kind of a lookalike network that sounds, say Starbucks, maybe Starbucks, I know they do have a Wi-Fi, but maybe it'll be some Starbucks something else to make it sound like it's legitimate when it's not. So you just want to be really careful if you're connecting to a public Wi-Fi, what you're doing. And then the other thing is that you can also turn off the Wi-Fi and just use the data plan on your phone, so that that would be private then in that case. If you're going to be doing lots of traveling and kind of connecting virtually, one thing you can also do is get what's called a virtual private network, or a VPN. And this would be, there's some free services available. A lot of them are it's kind of like you get what you pay for. So if it's free, you'll probably get lots of ads, and your information might not, they might use your information in other ways, which you might not like. But there are some, paid plans that we would probably recommend that you go take advantage of if you want to go down that route. And this would be a way to connect to the internet that would really encrypt your data and keep it safe while you were online. Again, not necessary for the average person, but if you're going to be traveling a lot, that's something to consider and a way to have your information remain safe. And then some other tips that can help you stay safe is shredding documents. So some people have those, shredders you can get at home. You can get these, pretty inexpensive things. Sometimes it's a separate machine. Other times it's just a little piece that sits on top of a trash can that you just pull out of the, the drawer or whatever, whenever you need it. But that's good advice to keep on shredding those documents. There's some places that will do these public, maybe at your local community center or wherever else, government center place. They might have a, this month where you have a big shredding event, you just drive up and, they take all your boxes of stuff and they shred them right there on some huge truck. So there's a number of opportunities to take care of your old documents. You don't want to have things, stuff with personal information kind of out there just in the recycling bin or the trash. Of course, be careful with your, your money, your wallet, your purse. Whether you're filling up the gas at the gas station, and we leave sometimes our stuff there in the front seat and are turning around and not paying attention at what we're doing, or shopping. I've had to change what I do. That I used to just put my purse in the very front of the shopping cart, and again, you're usually looking elsewhere to get things off the shelf. It's just a good idea to have that closer to your body. You can also
that gas station one, unfortunately, it happened to a friend of mine in Tennessee, and her car was stolen right out from under her. And you know, if the fob's in the purse and the purse is in the car, and away it went. And it was very traumatic, as we can certainly understand.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I can imagine having your car stolen out from under you too. But yeah, I've definitely heard of people where their purses or wallets have been stolen out of the front. And again, you're thinking, but I'm right here. What could possibly happen? But unfortunately, you know.
Well, and they do something to where you put the credit card in that it doesn't work, and then it causes you to focus on that.
Yeah.
And then the theft is taking place.
And then there's also the skimmers that if you do your credit card, you know, I try to kind of put my hand over as I'm typing in, or if I'm typing in my PIN number, you know, just to cover up that in case there's some kind of, someone stuck some illegal camera on top. Another thing you can do is you can freeze your credit with each bureau, and I have the website up here. That's a good idea. You used to have to pay every time you froze or unfroze your credit. That is no longer the case. So if you're concerned about, you know, someone stealing your identity or using it against, you know, against you, then that's something you can definitely do. It is a little bit of a process, so you need to, you know, put aside a little time to deal with that. But that's something to consider, and including for children, that we don't think about children being vulnerable, but in fact, they are. And one reason why scammers like children is because that they, you know, you're typically not going to check on their credit for, you know, how long, you know, it would take you a while to figure out that maybe their information has been compromised. We already talked about the password manager and the VPN. So I hope that this information has been helpful. I know that there's a lot of great websites out there that have a lot of information, but I also want to share with you a little bit about the Frogwatch Network, which is you know, a program of AARP, whose mission is to you know, empower consumers to spot and avoid scams. We have a lot of fraud prevention resources on our website, including tip sheets that have over 60 plus specific scams identified, and exactly, you know, spells out how they work and the tips you can do to protect yourself. We do. We have these watchdog alerts that are delivered every other week to either your email or you can sign up for text alerts that they'll help keep you on top of the latest scams. And we do some virtual events, we do some webinars, we do some other events that eventually will be in person as we start to open up and do more local activities. But right now we're doing a lot of virtual events. And the other resource that is very helpful to folks is our Frogwatch Helpline. This helpline is staffed by volunteers and managed by AARP. It is free, it is open to the public. You do not have to be a member to call. And they are very helpful in helping people, whether it's identify whether something's a scam, whether it's taking a report, you just want to let someone know that you were targeted by a scam and to help warn others. Of course, if you've actually fallen victim or a family member has, they are there to help you with what to do next. And be a sounding board for people. You know, sometimes you just need to talk to someone. Sometimes people don't feel comfortable talking to their family members. So this is a place you can reach out to again, get some support and some steps on what to do next. So I hope that these resources are helpful to you. I've really enjoyed spending this time with you and hope that it's helped. Again, I think the message is that we want to have you feel empowered and to know that there are things you can do to protect yourself.
That's great. I'm sure we could continue for another couple of hours, but we're grateful for the time that you've given us, Gina, and I've taken lots of notes, and we'll be sure to send out a follow-up email to the attendees with these different links. I mean, I love that there's an 800 number, and
Yeah, absolutely.
you know, just having that at one's fingertips if you're just questioning anything. For right now, I still have a young one at home. I can say, hey, what do you think about this? But you know, again, to your point, if you feel kind of silly, at least you can call and get some good rational help on the other end. So that's,
yes, and they see, I mean, our helpline, they see it all. So there will be nothing that will shock them or surprise them. And even if it is, like you said, I'm questioning this, they will be able to identify, you know, whether or not that is a scam. And as you said, it can just be a great sounding board.
yeah, yeah. And I like that alert that you all send too. I think that that could be helpful to know. Oh, it's a calendar scam this month. That's the hot one.
Exactly, and that's the thing. They're always evolving because they know that if, oh, people are kind of getting on to this scam, okay, maybe we'll kind of put that on the back burner. We're gonna, you know, try this new thing over here. So they're constantly evolving and changing up their tactics, etc. So it's good to stay on top of it.
Yeah, that's great. Well, again, thank you so much. Liz and I appreciate everyone who's on the line. We will be sure to follow up. And, you know, you can always reach out to us at Blue Heron Financial Group. We are very, very pleased that Gina was agreeable to hopping on and to help educate us as well as to educate you. Liz, did you have anything else?
Just thank you so much, Gina. That was really helpful. I love the helpline, especially so that people can at least call somebody if they're not willing to call their family or a close friend. I think that's wonderful.
Absolutely.
So thank you. And thank you all for hopping on.